Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee. First of all, there are a few matters of housekeeping. Audio recordings are made of all meetings, and these recordings are published on the Council's website. Please, would speakers use the microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and the use of mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, by visitors is welcomed, but you are requested to use them discreetly, to set them to silent, and to not use voice or camera flash functions. Those using such devices are asked to remain seated during the meeting. We will have a break at 8 o'clock, if there are still items outstanding. There are no planned fire alarm tests, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest available exit and go to the assembly area in the car park at the rear of the town hall. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room. I am the Chairman, Councillor John Manning. To my right is Deputy Chairman, Councillor Jessica Scott Patel. The rest of the committee are opposite me and will introduce themselves, starting on the extreme left with Councillor Jarvis.
Good evening, Brian Jarvis, Ward Councillor for Lexton.
Pauline Hazel, Shrub End Ward.
Pat Moore, West Mersey Ward.
Jackie McLean, Cotford and West Stanley Ward.
Marcus Harrington, West Burgold and Ash Green, substituting for Peter Chillingworth.
Laura Sykes, Stanway Ward.
Rosalind Scott, Wivenhoe Quay.
Mike Lilly, East London Ward.
Helen Chua, St Anne's Ward.
Jo Hayes, Castle Ward.
Thank you. The planning officers this evening are Vincent Pearce, Chris Harden and Simon Cairns. Amanda Chigi is here for procedural matters. To all those present in the room at this meeting, we are a quasi-judicial committee. We make our decisions based on material planning considerations following the laws of the land and the policies of the council. If we are minded to refuse an application, we will use such considerations that will stand up in a court of law. The material planning considerations are listed in the committee's agenda. Has everyone who wishes to speak registered their name?
Councillor Cope has registered, Chairman, so there is no one else indicating.
Thank you. If anyone has a petition they wish to present to me on any of the items on the agenda, please do so now.
No one else is indicating, Chairman.
Substitution, we have Councillor Harrington for Councillor Chillingworth. Urgent items, there are no urgent items. Declarations of interest. Councillor Chair.
I have a non-pecuniary interest on item 7.2, which is the Severs Hospital site. I was a past employee of the hospital, of the Mental Health Trust, and I took part in the St Albans opening when I was mayor in 2012.
Councillor Hayes.
I'd just like to declare that I do not have an interest, pecuniary or otherwise, in the Eld Lane matter. I did call it in at the request of residents, but I've carefully considered whether I have a closed mind and have predetermined the matter, and I don't think I have predetermined the matter.
Anyone else? Okay, item 6 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of August. Is that a proposal? Oh, there's a query. Councillor Moore.
Yeah. 201 says Councillor Moore had a pecuniary interest. In fact, it was a non-pecuniary interest. Councillor Moore, the record indicates you left the meeting after that declaration. I did leave the meeting, but it says here Councillor Moore, in respect of the applicant's family and location, declared a pecuniary interest. I didn't. It wasn't. It was a non-pecuniary, but I did leave the meeting. It was, but it wasn't pecuniary. I'll get that amended, Chairman.
So, subject to that amendment, do I have someone to propose? Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Hazel. All those in favour?
That's approved, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now go through the applications one at a time with the speakers. Item 7.1, I have Brett Lord to speak for, but only if someone is against. 7.2, I have no speakers, but I am going to pull that one out because obviously it's a very important thing with regards to 106 money. I'm also going to move it to the end of the meeting so that members of the public can go home if they wish to. 7.3, I have James Hancock's speaking against, Ian Anderson for. 7.4 has been withdrawn. 7.5, I have Ben Cahill against. I have John Reddy for and Councillor Nick Cope as a visiting councillor. Mr. Jiddy, could you tell us which items we could take en bloc?
Chairman, if you choose not to consider, if the committee chooses not to consider this particular item, as there is no speaker in relation to 7.1, you may choose to agree the recommendations in the report in respect of that particular item, that's 7.1.
Okay, would anyone like to propose 7.1? Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Scott. All those in favour?
That's unanimous. Sorry, that's 11 in favour, Chairman.
All those against? And abstentions? Thank you. Now going to move on to item 7.3. And this is Mr. Cairns to present.
Good evening, Chair, members. This application relates to the area of public realm at the junction of Eld Lane and Lion Walk. The development is proposed as an A3 unit. I have no updates to the report except those shown on the amendment sheet, and would like to reiterate that the objection previously received from the operator of the River Island unit has now been formally withdrawn, and they no longer have any objection to the development. In terms of the report, I won't reiterate the contents thereof, but I will just quickly run through the presentation to refresh members' memory of the site and its surroundings. This is the proposal, Chair. As you can see on the left-hand side, we have the existing square as it currently stands. On the right, one can see tucked up in the north-east corner of the square, attached to one face of this octagonal chapter house-shaped retail unit with the United Reformed Church over, is a projecting single-storey addition to the blind face of the existing unit to comprise a single-storey A3 unit, partly of glazed construction and partly of masonry construction. Here we have the elevations, Chair. As you'll see from the extreme left-hand, the top left-hand image, the proposal comprises a largely glazed, concertinaed extension to a parapeted screen wall faced in ragstone to match the stone used on the adjacent former church buildings, which have now been demolished and redeveloped, with a first floor place of worship over retail units at the ground floor. As you can see, this would occupy some of the existing public open space. The bottom elevation on the left shows the return elevation to the east, as would address the existing landscape buffer between the site and the existing church, the Eld Lane Baptist Church to the east. The top image on the right shows the existing arrangement in terms of the glazed elevation of the River Island unit, and then the proposal with its partly glazed and partly masonry elevations, which are designed to mimic the mix of units, mix of materials, facing materials used on the existing retail and place of worship. And then, Chair, at the bottom right, there is an illustration showing the elevations of the largely glazed pavilion that would project in total some 13 metres into the existing open space. Here we have a computer-generated image showing how the proposal would appear when viewed from the west within the existing public open space. As you can see, the proposal is a trapezoidal arrangement of sort of almost goalposts, which are glazed, attached to a screen wall of ragstone, which would in turn attach to the existing retail development. Here's another similar view showing the proposed development in terms of a lightweight permeable structure, which would occupy the space between, which is currently exists between the existing retail development and the side elevation to the Eld Lane Baptist Church. Here is a view from the south of the existing public open space, which to the left-hand, to the right-hand area of the image, one can see the existing gap in the low walling and the steps leading up to the River Island unit. All of these existing surface finishes would be replaced as part of the development. Here we have a view of the site from immediately to the west. As you can see, in the background is a tree standing within the open space. That is one of the trees that would be lost. In the opinion of the council's arboriculturalist, this tree has no particular significance and is unfortunately reverting to its original wild form from being a variegated ornamental tree. This is the view from the east, from within the forecourt area fronting the Eld Lane Baptist Church. As you can see, there is a substantial screen planting on the boundary, which includes views through to the existing retail development and church above. You can see the yellowing top of the canopy of the Norway maple referred to in the officer report, and that is scheduled for removal. And here, Chair, we have the area that would be developed as part of the A3 unit. As you can see, the tree in the foreground, the ragstone walling, and the benches which would be lost as part of the development, and the space between the blind brick elevation of the return elevation to the River Island retail unit, and the flank elevation of the adjacent listed Eld Lane Baptist Church. The brown door leads to the fire escape that currently serves the upper floor unit as a place of worship for the United Reformed Church, and that is referred to in the report, Chair. And here again we have a direct view of the area which would be developed as part of the proposals. As you can see, it does contain some public seating. The developers have indicated they would be amenable to a condition to see that replaced elsewhere within the immediate environs. In any event, Chair, the proposal involves the provision of new copings to the existing perimeter walling, which would serve as an extensive area of new seating. Thank you, Chair.
call Mr Hancock's, please. Okay, when you're ready, the button in the middle, you'll have 3 minutes. A bell will go after 2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr Chairman and Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of a number of members of Lion Walk United Reformed Church, several of who are here this evening, and who have submitted objections to the planning application for a cafe unit. There has been a church on the site for well over 370 years, and the current church sanctuary is directly above the River Island store. In recent years, the church has cooperated and participated in precinct events such as the switching on of the Christmas lights. A wide variety of objections were submitted, of which you are all aware, and the applicant has already responded to some of them, although not necessarily adequately or convincingly in our opinion. Of particular concern is the close proximity of the cafe to the windows at the southern end of the sanctuary, which provide natural ventilation, but which are at high risk of allowing disturbing noise and fumes into the church. Times of silent prayer, reflection and meditation form an important part of the church's regular Sunday worship, and we already need to close the windows at the northern end of the sanctuary that overlook Colchester to avoid similar disturbance. Closing the windows at both ends of the sanctuary would shut off the natural ventilation, and there is no air conditioning to compensate. Another area of concern is the church car park and how rightful use of that facility by church members and lettings will interact with the operation of the cafe. The parking plan submitted by the applicant on 22nd of July is not convincing, and I would challenge whoever drew it to safely park all those cars and then reverse them out onto Eld Lane afterwards, all the while avoiding coffee drinkers and pedestrians who use that area. Access from the fire escape and provision for refuge and recycling storage have also caused concern, and I'm sure will be addressed. In my opinion, a key to resolving and mitigating these issues so that the cafe and church can be good neighbours lies in agreement of trading hours and conditions, which were not initially submitted in the first application. I see that point 9 of the report places a small restriction on the operating hours. However, these timings have not fully taken into account the use and needs of the church. We would therefore recommend following hours to avoid disturbance. Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m, and then on Sundays, midday to 6 p.m. The reasoning being that on weekday evenings and Wednesday lunchtime concerts, the church premises are used by a number of church and non-church local organisations, and those arriving to set up will need to park shortly after 6 p.m, so it is important that tables and chairs are cleared away by then. On Sunday mornings, the church is open by 9:30 in preparation for the morning service, which starts at 10 o'clock and then usually finishes around 11:15, followed by a time of informal fellowship in the church hall. Most people would generally leave by midday. However, there are occasions such as harvest lunches and afternoons.
I'm sorry, that's your time up. I hope you got most of what you wanted to say.
Great,
Thank you. Ian Anderson. Okay, same rules apply. You'll have 3 minutes and the bell will go after 2. Your time will start as soon as you press the button.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Committee. Thank you for letting me address you this evening. My name is Ian Anderson. I'm a Senior Director at the team at CBRE and we're the planning consultants for this project. You have before you a very strong and well-written report by your Senior Planning Officer, Simon Cairns, that examines the planning merits of the proposal. His firm view is that the proposal accords with the development plan and that there are significant advantages arising from the development. He concludes that planning permission should be granted for the cafe and public realm enhancements to the square, and that the proposal will add vitality and viability to the town centre. The key points associated with the planning considerations raised by this application are, firstly, principle. The principle of improving this area is supported in the policies of the plan and the Council's adopted supplementary planning document for Colchester, with Eld Lane specifically identified for potential cafe and public realm enhancements. We therefore accord with the plan. Secondly, design. Colchester Urban Design Officer is supportive of the proposed design, extending the active frontage of the square and vitality of what is a poorly orientated area. The innovative design of the proposals is strongly supported, as are the enhancements and update of the public realm. Thirdly, amenity, noise and fumes. Your case officer notes that this is a town centre location where certain noise levels are expected. However, notwithstanding this, he concludes that his cafe will not generate significant noise, fumes or any other detrimental amenity associated with its use. There will be no primary cooking associated with the unit, just the serving of coffees, cakes, sandwiches and light bites. Restrictive opening hours on seating have also been offered and conditioned. Litter will be dealt with by a management arrangement alongside the existing shopping centre. Fourthly, car parking and outside space. As confirmed by your case officer, the informal parking by the church is a private matter rather than a planning one in this instance. However, negotiations with the church have shaped the proposals to ensure that there will not be a loss of car parking, and indeed the development proposes 4 square metres of space more than is presently available. Sovereign have also agreed that outside public seating will not be available during key worship times on Sundays, and this will be written into the lease with the proposed operator. Fifthly, tree removal. No objection is raised by your own arboricultural officer, who confirms that the tree report is acceptable and the loss of the Norway maple is justified and acceptable owing to the low value of the species. And finally, archaeology. An onerous condition is imposed to guarantee that full survey work is carried out before any development takes place. It has also been agreed with the Council that the structure of the kiosk will be deliberately lightweight and float on the ground. Members will note that the River Island objection has now been removed. In summary, the proposals accord with the development plan. The enhancements proposed will propose vitality and viability of the town centre. I commend your officer's report and his strong recommendation for approval that you grant planning permission this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Simon Cares to answer any points that were brought up. I'd quite like to hear about the opening hours suggested by Mr. Hancock's.
Thank you, Chair. Dealing with the issue of opening hours, as you can see within the conditions, there is a specific condition proposed at condition 9, which is based on the recommendation of your environmental protection officers. They consider this to be more, adequate to protect public amenity, and they have had regard to the fact that there are residential properties in the general vicinity. I can see no particular reason that a cafe use of this nature on a Sunday morning should conflict with a place of worship. This is generally the sort of quiet use that is perfectly compatible with a town centre use such as this. It seems that the hours suggested by Mr. Hancock's are really quite restrictive. 6 p.m. on a weekday evening is seemingly not really based on any particular rationale to me, and similarly to open on Sunday at midday, which is normally quite a quiet, pre-midday is probably quite a quiet trading time. I would be very surprised if there was sufficient justification to warrant such a restrictive hours of opening. Addressing the other issues that were raised, in terms of parking, as we've heard, we consider that to be a private matter. Arguably, parking in this area of public realm is in public terms quite undesirable in many ways. There is a lot of car parking in very close walking distance to this site, notably at Vineyard Gate, we can't really perceive that there is a strong argument to persist. But as we've heard, the proposals will not impact materially in any event on the extent of parking that may be provided. But to conclude, this is really a private matter between the landlord and tenant. The site is owned by the church, and clearly there is a lease arrangement in place which should be appropriate to manage this relationship. In terms of the fire escape, we don't believe that this would be inhibited by the proposals, and our building control manager has confirmed that he doesn't perceive there to be any conflict with that. In terms of refuse, a condition is imposed requiring details of the refuse arrangements to be submitted and agreed. In terms of noise and disturbance, as we've heard, it's your officers and environmental protection officers' opinion that the proposal should not give rise to undue noise or disturbance, particularly having regard to this town centre location. The fumes may similarly be managed by the appropriate condition which is recommended in the schedule, which requires details to be submitted should there be any cooking on site. That would of course be appropriately managed. Generally units of this nature have very limited cooking, but nevertheless that eventuality is covered within the suggested schedule of conditions. I think that's probably just about it, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Hayes and give her the option of speaking first if she wishes to as the ward councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a number of concerns, starting just with some details. There would in fact be 3 benches lost for public use, which at the moment are quite clearly visible on the photographs, not 2 as is stated in some of the documents, somewhere in the documents I spotted just now. If you actually look, yes, there they are, 3. And so I noticed when this came up, I sort of started walking by and noticing there's generally people sitting on those benches, enjoying the dappled shade, enjoying a little rest and respite from the hurly-burly, reading the papers. And I would like to there to be a condition that substitute seating with a back, because I don't think sitting on top of a wall is what my idea of a good seat, should be provided elsewhere. And that may mean some rehashing of the parking proposals, but I think it's very regrettable, really, that there is a proposal to reduce this amount of open space of shady, tranquil little corner that this is, and I think that's absolutely essential that there should be substitute proper seating. That's point 1. Point 2 is that out of sight in this particular photograph, but in the south, what I think must be the southwest corner, there's actually a little raised garden area. And I envisage that the proposed increase in parking of a few square metres consists of taking out that, well, as shown on the proposed plans, that consists of taking out and losing that bit of garden, and I would oppose the loss of that bit of garden. It's rather pleasant to have a bit of greenery to walk by. If it is lost, then in any event, I would propose that there should be substitute trees provided for the 2 which are proposed to be removed, because I think shade and somewhere for sort of birds to nest and for people to enjoy birdsong is all part of the unique and very pleasant character of Colchester, and we don't want to have just a brick and stone sort of dead urban area, which unfortunately we seem to be sort of sliding towards as tree after tree goes. So I would like to keep the garden area and or have substitute trees. My next point is that the report says that there's no relevant planning history, but I have been in contact with Mr. Cairns about this matter, and it appears that although there's a very long planning history relating to the Lion Walk development, going back to the late 60s, early 70s, whereas this particular bit was developed in the mid-80s, approximately. The planning files, I did in fact ask whether I could see the relevant planning file for the demolition of the church and the creation of this space, and it appears that they're all on microfiche, which is sort of reduced size photocopies on plastic, which are currently a way to be digitized, so they're not actually available to view. And so I would like to suggest that in order to make up, because we only get one go at getting this right, I think it's very important that we should have all relevant planning decisions and considerations investigated thoroughly. And I don't feel it's very satisfactory that the council, wearing its sort of record holder hat, can't at the moment produce all the documents. And I would like to propose that. In other words, I'd like to propose deferral. And I'd also like to say I regret that the computer-generated images do not show the other church, the Baptist church next door. And it makes it look makes it all look much bigger, and it makes it look, now I'm talking about the computer-generated images. In fact, there is a church to the east, and the corner of the church building, which would be up against the back of the cafe, is actually at the moment a rather charming pair of windows. There's a sort of round porthole on the ground floor, and there's a long, tall, vertical-shaped window above, which, to my mind, sort of wearing my Heritage Champions hat, it's a rather sort of interesting little, architecturally interesting little bit of the town. You can't actually see the windows because there are the tree leaves, there's a foliage in the way there, but it's the cream bit of building just to the right of the grey building. And as I understand it, those would be out of sight. I wonder about the effect on light to those windows, and I would like to know what the comments of the applicant are about that problem, because it seems to me that it's something that hasn't really been sort of fully explored. Thank you.
I have Councillor Scott and Councillor Hazel.
Thank you. I'm also concerned about the loss of public open space, free space, where you don't have to actually pay for something to sit down. So I would definitely want those 3 seats and the type of seating, i.e. the environment, to be replaced elsewhere. I think it's quite a good idea to take it out of the parking. But I'm also concerned to know that we're making a decision without the full planning history. So I would second that proposal for a deferment to seek more information.
Councillor Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. I support Councillor Hayes in this in every respect. It's rather nice to be able to sit out and have coffee in a leafy square. I totally accept that. But unfortunately, it's subjective, isn't it? I find this application, it's ugly to my eyes. It's the wrong kind of building in that space. For me, it doesn't fit. So I would actually, the least I would do would be to vote for deferral, but I'd like to see it turned down and fresh plans submitted. Thank you, Chair.
I have myself and then Councillor Moore. One very small thing that I would like to see, and I'd like to see this not just on this application but on lots of applications. We're talking about replacing the benches, replacing the trees elsewhere within the vicinity. I just think we need to put in place a mechanism whereby ward councillors, planning officers and the applicant, after the formative decision has been made, are able to get together round a table and say, well, actually, no, that's no good, I'd like it there, that's no good, I'd like it there, that would be better than that, and come to an agreement between themselves. And I just think it would help ward councillors have a bit more involvement in things, and I didn't know if there was a mechanism to do that, and that was just my one comment on especially these benches. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I also agree with Councillor Hayes on most of what she said about shade and quiet places, peaceful places. Certainly when we were there were people sitting there for, 5-10 minutes and then moving off, and it's a place that is well used as a place of peace and quiet, and that should be recreated somewhere else in the scheme. It should also be a shady place. And on the subject of shade, I was very concerned at looking at the plans and knowing that that tree is to be taken away. What you're in fact planning to build is a south-facing conservatory with no shade. Now, they will almost certainly either have to air condition it or put chicks into it to stop people cooking in the height of the summer. So it won't be quite as planned. If you put chicks in it, it's no longer going to be a glassy, airy thing. It'll be different. I'm also worried about if we say, right, okay, you can take that tree down, which, by the way, I'm rather hurt by the notion it's of low value. All trees are valuable. I'm sorry, I don't know what you have to be high value, but it's a nice tree. They could cut out the bits that have gone dark green. All maples do that. But if it's agreed that there's going to be replanting to put another tree that will grow to that sort of size, who's going to monitor it? We know perfectly well we plant saplings and they're vandalised, and in the end people give up replacing them. We are taking down a mature tree and promising to put something else somewhere else. I think it's all very dodgy. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Mr. Cairns.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate, the loss of the 3 benches may be dealt with by condition. If members think it's appropriate to seek substitute seating, we can of course achieve that by condition. The applicants have indicated their willingness to do so. I would reiterate that the proposals provide for a vast amount of additional public seating in the form of polished granite copings along the length of the ragstone walling, which will provide new seating that isn't presently available. The rather dodgy copings on the existing walling don't provide a terribly stable or comfortable seating arrangement, whereas the proposal would, to a large extent, more than mitigate the loss of the 3 existing benches in the corner, but that can be dealt with by condition. The loss of the planter in the corner of the square, the southwest corner, I think is rather subjective. Personally, I don't find it very attractive, but it is a green feature, and but we do have a suggested full landscaping condition as part of the proposals, and a replacement tree or appropriate planting could be sought as part of those landscaping conditions. With regard to the suggestion that the proposal should be deferred, I have investigated the original grant of consent, which was an outline consent back in 1971, with a reserved matter submission in 1972, which related to the demolition of the existing church. We have secured the detailed conditions that were imposed on the 1972 consent. There is nothing onerous or surprising there. With regard to the 1971 grant of outline consent, we have sought the return of any fiched details, which would be all that we have, and we have been advised by the company that is digitising that there are no records. So it would appear that this is a completely missing file for which deferral would serve no purpose, because we do not have, it would seem, any history relating to the 1971 consent. This would originally have been a large paper file which would be subsequently microfiched. However, it appears that it was either not microfiched or it had vanished before it was capable of being microfiched. So I'm afraid, members, I must advise you at the present time, it's our belief that we do not have those details. But what I can advise you is Councillor Hayes' greatest concern appeared to be that there was a legal agreement pertaining to this space. I have confirmed with land charges there is no such agreement in existence. So there is no legal reason why that could effectively hinder the grant of consent. Clearly, the detailed scheme for this area of space was agreed as part of the reserved matter submission, and we have no reason to believe, there are certainly no conditions on there which would appear to conflict with your decision today. Moving on to Councillor Hazel's comments that this is an ugly and the wrong building. It's your officer's belief that this isn't an ugly building. That's been confirmed by extensive pre-application consultation with both your conservation officer and your urban designer, and indeed other members of the heritage team, all of which have no design objection to the proposal. Design is to some extent obviously in the eye of the beholder. This is a rather brutal 1960s/70s style space with very poor public realm at the moment. As you can see, the finishes, the concrete paviers, and the rather dated seating is something which would benefit from a significant refresh, at the very least in your officer's belief. As I've mentioned before, the loss of the benches could be mitigated by the provision of replacement seating by condition. In terms of the argument about the loss of a quiet place, I think a converse view in the opinion officers would be that this unit would serve to animate that space, would serve to give it more purpose, would serve to provide more of a reason to sit and linger and enjoy this space, and indeed there is a landscaping condition on there which could provide for more appropriate replacement planting. The loss of the Norway maple is something which our arboriculturalist does not consider to be something which we could defend. It's not considered to be an important tree. As we've heard, it's reverting to green. Nearly all of it is now green. Frankly, if you cut that away, you'd be left with virtually nothing. In the opinion of officers, it's not a mature tree. It's only a semi-mature tree that isn't of any great substance in terms of its contribution. In terms of the issue of ventilation, that is a building control matter, not a planning matter, I'm afraid, and something which would have to be dealt with by building control to ensure that the building is fit for purpose. With regard to the issue of replanting, this area is covered by CCTV. Any vandalism could be picked up. But as we can see, there's no apparent history in the locality of vandalism of any of the planting. All of it seems to be in pretty good shape. All the shrubs that have been referred to by members, none of them seem to even have any broken branches or anything. So I'm not convinced that there would be a problem with vandalism in this location. In terms of the overall dividend that would be delivered, there are very substantial investments proposed in the public realm, which would also be seen as a significant public benefit. I hope that probably addresses most of the comments, but I'd be happy to comment further if required, Chair.
Okay, I've got Councillor McLean, Councillor Scott, then Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the benches, they seem to be causing a little bit of concern to people. Whereabouts would they be placed? You know, say conditions in the area, could they be in the immediate vicinity somewhere, or will there not be room for them? You know, you talk about the little low brick wall being polished marble. Well, that's fantastic for children to play on, let alone somebody to be able to sit on. So it's just how these restrictions are going to be upheld to allow people to use them as seating. The tree, who's meant to be maintaining that part to let it get out of control and to get to that sort of condition, that because we don't want to lose any more in that area. I just wondered who's responsible for those. So I just think it's just a couple of finer points would be worth knowing, you know, where they would be. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Oh, I agree with you about the restriction on the hours being too great, but I wonder if the Sunday morning would be a reasonable restriction on the hours.
Councillor Lilly.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We talked about everything above, so we should talk about what's below. We understand there could be some items of interest down there, and I think one of the conditions is that nothing will be built there in case before all the surveys have been done. But when the buildings were put up originally, wasn't there a survey done of a similar nature of archaeological, and that's got to be close to the site as well, and was anything found down there?
Councillor Jarvis, and I'll go back to the officer.
Thank you, Chair. I personally don't have a problem with the design. I think that's quite appropriate for this area. I think the two can sit side by side. You can have a cafe amenity there, and you can have a public realm where people can sit out, and there's an element of tranquility there. I think the points raised by Councillor Hayes were totally valid, and if you can address the question of replacement of the seats and the improved landscaping and replacement of the trees, I was a little concerned myself about that window being masked by the new building, but what's behind that window I don't know. But I think most of the concerns that have been raised can be accommodated within this application, and I don't have a problem in proposing acceptance of this application subject to the conditions laid down and the points raised by Councillor Hayes.
Mr. Cairns.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the matter raised by Councillor McLean with regard to where the seats would be replaced, there is more than ample scope within the square or immediately on adjoining the square for the provision of benches. This land is in the control of the Lion Walk development, Sovereign Properties, and maintained by them. It's not maintained by ourselves, and consequently all of the area is potentially an area where replacement seating could take place, including the area immediately to the north-west quadrant of the square. So a detailed scheme could be required by condition in terms of the design of the replacement seating, which could be markedly more attractive than these rather brutalist early 1970s concrete seats. I'm sure with the agreement of the developers, and we already have that, more seating could be provided. With regard to the issue of the tree, I think we have to point out this: all of this land is a private space. Technically, it is land in private ownership. It's land maintained by the Lion Walk development. It is part of their Lion Walk development. It isn't officially public realm, although effectively it functions as such. The replacement of the tree is something that can be secured by condition, and I would have thought that we could either have trees or a tree in that corner of the southwest quadrant of the square, which has been referred to by several members, or trees within this eastern boundary to replace those which would be lost. As I've reiterated previously, our arboriculturalist and the landscape officer has no objection to that. Councillor Scott raises the issue of the restricted hours and comments that the suggested restrictions are maybe too great, but propose that Sunday morning might be considered reasonable. I think all I would say is that your environmental protection officers have considered this and have had a regard to the fact that there are residential properties in the vicinity. Their opinion is that their suggestion is appropriate in terms of the restriction on the hours. I would have anticipated that, frankly, an early Sunday morning use of a coffee unit would be unlikely to be particularly noisy or raucous. Bearing in mind it is a Sunday morning, there'd probably be quite low usage and pretty quiet, I would have expected. Certainly my experience of the town centre on a Sunday morning isn't that it's particularly lively, to be honest. So I'd be surprised if there's a real problem with that. And I suggest that the condition as it stands is probably reasonable. Councillor Livni raised the issue of below ground remains. This is a genuine concern, and hence the two extremely onerous conditions that have been reported that are contained within the schedule. The original archaeological survey is extremely patchy in this area. We are aware that this is an area of very high potential for Roman remains, and obviously the burials that related to the church. So it is highly sensitive, and we need to be convinced that the detailed proposals will not harm that archaeology, and consequently the conditions that are recommended have been drafted by the Council's archaeological advisor, and he is of the opinion that it gives us more than adequate protection. With regard to the issue raised by Councillor Jarvis in relation to masking of the window in the adjacent listed building, I would just point out that this part of the listed building is in fact a later Edwardian addition to the original early 19th century frontage of the Baptist Church. It is very much a flanking elevation. Whilst it is in itself not unattractive, it would not be lost. It would be partly obscured by the development, but on balance it's felt that the development would in itself enhance the public realm and animate what is at the moment a slightly potentially underused corner. We appreciate that today there were users in there, but for much of the winter months it is rather dank and not particularly attractive, and does in itself attract a degree of antisocial behaviour at times. In terms of the loss of that window, it's not loss, the partial obscuring of that window, it's not felt that in itself would be materially harmful to the setting of the listed building, the setting of which is primarily the immensely important formal forecourt with its pollarded lime trees along the frontage. That part of the setting is the element which is of the greatest significance, or makes the greatest contribution to the significance of that heritage asset, and it's not felt that by partially obscuring some windows on the side elevation that would in itself cause harm to the setting of the listed building, and therefore the recommendation stands, Chair.
Thank you. I have myself, then Councillor Harrington. Just listening to Councillor Scott and Mr. Cairns, and it occurs to me that actually if Sunday morning is so quiet as a retail time, why would it be a problem not to open? It's not like they'd be losing a lot of money, and we're not actually talking about protecting residential amenity, whereas normally we would be. What we're actually talking about is people's right to worship. And I think people's right to worship, especially on a Sunday, and whichever church or you go to or don't go to is, to my mind, irrelevant. But actually you should have the right to peaceful worship, and I think that right is very important. I would like to actually propose that we include a condition that on a Sunday that the cafe cannot open to the public until midday. From what Mr. Cairns has said, this shouldn't be a problem because it's a very quiet time of day, so they wouldn't be losing a great deal of money. I think it would give the church the opportunity to do their worship calmly, in peace, and in a reasonable environment. So I would like to propose that that is included in the conditions. Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chair. I'd actually like to second the proposal made by Councillor Jarvis as it stands. Get straight to your point there about Sunday morning opening. Of course, worshippers have a right to worship. You could also say that coffee drinkers have a right to drink coffee on Sunday mornings as well. I'm not convinced that drinking coffee there really is going to disturb worship that takes place in the church. I consider the matter of design is simply a matter of taste. Some might like it, some might not. I think it'll probably add to the atmosphere of Eld Lane. But the two conditions that are important to me in seconding Councillor Jarvis's proposal are the replacement of the benches, which I think most of us agree about, and the landscaping, including replanting a tree, that these two conditions must be dealt with satisfactorily, and subject to those conditions, then I would like to second that proposal. Thank you.
Okay, we have no more proposals. Mr. Cairns, you got anything to add?
No, Chair, except to point out to members that the present state of the law is that Sunday trading only extends from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. In any event on a Sunday. So there is a restriction in place in any event on a Sunday. With regard to the issue of shade, I would just point out to members we would have loved to have seen more planting potentially in the square. However, it was felt that given the majority of objections received related to the provision of car parking in the square, we felt that would conflict with that overall desire. And as the visiting members will have seen on site, this space is in fact signposted as the car park. Somewhat sadly, in my opinion, to the existing church rather than as a public open space. So that is the reason why we haven't sought more extensive planting. Thank you, Chair.
Just one point on the Sunday trading hours. It is relative to the size of the store. I doubt that this cafe would actually reach the square footage required to stop it opening outside of the Sunday trading hours. So I think we do need to actually make sure we nail down what the times are. Okay, we have two proposals on the table at the moment. We currently have the first one that we have to take is for deferral. Now, having heard what the officer has said about the unlikely event of finding any more information, do you still want us to take that vote, Councillor Hayes?
Chair, yes, because I feel that in the short time available since I raised the point, it may be that the company which is digitising this information has not had the opportunity to make a full search of all the microfiche records, and it may be that other sources of council files and documents, such as the local history section of the Essex Library up the road, may be able to fill in the gaps. So I would like an opportunity for us to be fully and completely informed about the planning history.
Okay, that's a proposal we would have to take first would be for deferral to try to find the relevant planning history of the site. All those in favour of a deferral? It was seconded by Councillor Scott. All those in favour of deferral?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Chairman.
All those against?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Chairman.
Okay, so we now come to Councillor Jarvis's proposal that we accept it as is with the added conditions placed on there by Councillor Hayes. All those in favour?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Chairman.
All those against?
That's 1, 2, 3, Chairman.
Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 7.5. As soon as the officer is ready.
Yes, the site lies within the town limits of Colchester, and it's an application with a change of use from a Class D1 to a Class to sui generis use with an HMO with excess of 6 residents. There will be 8 bedrooms provided, and there'll be a dormer on the roof and roof lights and additional accommodation at the second floor level. And just to confirm, in the report, it says it's a 2-storey building, a 3-storey building, but it is actually a 2-storey building. There will be additional accommodation in the roof, so the height of the building won't be raised, but it is technically a 2-storey building. So here is the site, located here, and the red line indicates the extent of the site. The conservation area is opposite Beaconsfield Road, and the entrance currently faces Malden Road here, and the new entrance would be positioned here, and I'll show you that on the elevations. So this is first of all looking at the site from Malden Road. The property is here. Note an existing archway here, and Beaconsfield Road down here. This is a view looking at the corner of the building, so Beaconsfield Road is here. And a bit further round, note the existing fencing here above the walling. And then a view showing its context. So the building in question is here. And then a view down Beaconsfield Road. You'll note that there is on-street parking all along the road, with very little on-site parking overall for the dwellings down there. Some do have parking spaces. There is no parking for the application site. So in terms of elevations, these are the existing elevations, and there is a picture here of the rear dormer proposed, so that's going on the south elevation. So we've got that additional detail. I'll just go back there. Those are the existing floor plans. And then in terms of the proposal, facing Beaconsfield Road, the main changes are the roof lights. So you've got 4 on that elevation. Then you've got a new access point just here. This is additional details showing a pitch over the access point. In this area here, over the current archway that I showed you, is a lean-to extension, and that is shown. Sorry, gone a bit too far there. That is shown on this elevation facing Malden Road. We've got an amendment in that shows the brick course detailing carrying on under the eaves to match the existing building. And then a section of the proposal showing the dormer in the roof there. And the internal layout shows 2 bedrooms on the ground floor, an access in here leading to the cycle storage building at the back. So the new access located in here, and the previous access blocked up with this extension to provide bedroom here. Then the first floor plan shows another 4 bedrooms. And then the second floor plan shows 2 more bedrooms, and then the roof plan shows the extent of the dormer here and the roof lights in the roof. I'll just take you back to the elevations. So in terms of planning considerations, the policies are outlined in the committee report. The principle of the scheme should be judged on its planning merits, and particular regard should be had to policy DP11. And having regard to that policy, the site is considered to be in a sustainable location. It has good access to shops and facilities. It's on the main road out of Colchester, not far from the central area. And in that respect, it's not considered that parking provision is required for this proposal, and given its location to Colchester town centre and the nature of the units for which there's less demand for car parking provision there would be for a family house. So it is not considered that parking provision for the proposal is required. In terms of design, amendments have been submitted which are considered satisfactory. The loss of the archway is a little bit unfortunate, but it is mitigated by the entrance being located here onto Beaconsfield Road, giving a feature on this elevation, and the fact that we're going to lose the close bordered fencing and get railings reinstated all the way along above the walling. So overall there will be a net visual benefit, and as I've said, the front extension here has got that corbelling that's below the pitched roof here, which links it through to the elevation around here. So overall, the loss of this archway feature is considered appropriate. Our design team is happy with that loss. There could potentially be an aim to retain the archway internally so that the feature remains within the building, because it is a locally listed building, and I think that would be a feasible thing to do. In terms of residential amenity, the scheme is not considered to be an over-intensive use of the site. Environmental Health have not raised objections to the scheme, and the environmental health legislation can control disturbance to neighbouring property in terms of if there's a statutory nuisance that can be investigated. In terms of windows facing neighbouring properties, all of those can be obscure glazed. Members will recall from the site visit that the existing windows are already obscure glazed, and therefore that ensures there's not a loss of privacy to the neighbouring property, because you'll see from the plan the neighbouring property is located with some of its garden area behind and right adjacent to the scheme. So all of these windows can be obscure glazed, or the retention of obscure glazing, and similarly the dormer to go in the roof will also need to be obscure glazed, and that can be at the highest level of obscure glazing to ensure there isn't overlooking of the neighbouring windows and also their private amenity areas. So from an impact on neighbouring property point of view, it's considered acceptable. So overall, we're therefore recommending approval with the conditions outlined in the report. There will be a recommendation of one extra condition that relates to getting details of this access point here, because there is a drop in level between the pavement and the site, so there'll need to be a bit of walling removed, and we'll need details of how that is going to be provided. There'll be a sort of a gentle rising of land in that position, and it seems to have turned the presentation off. So that condition will fall within one of the conditions 3 as outlined in the report, so we can add an extra point to condition 3. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I call Ben Cahill, please? Good evening, Mr. Cahill. You've seen how it's done. You'll have 3 minutes from the time you press the button. The bell will go after 2.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. I'd also like to thank the Committee for coming to the property this afternoon. Hopefully it was a useful visit. I'd like to point out that the architect has not visited the property at all. The application has been approved with conditions, as we just heard. Many of the conditions require the applicant to offer more information or redesign their proposals, which they have done. As the revised proposals have not been issued to us at least, there's been no opportunity for ourselves or other members of the public to offer any comments on the revised proposals. This is weighted heavily in favour of the applicant and against anybody that might want to object. The application plan, as previously was, and sectional drawings are inconsistent. The section shows the dormer directly from bedroom 7. However, the planning officer has pointed out that the dormer is not from bedroom 7 directly, as is shown on the plan. So there's an inconsistency there on the previous drawings at least. In addition to this inconsistency, the dormer does not comply with policy DP1 of the Colchester planning guidance, which states that proposals must, quote, protect existing public and residential amenity, particularly with regard to privacy, overlooking, noise, disturbance, daylight and sunlight. In this regard, the scheme fails to provide any assessment on the effects of the proposals on our daylight amenity. It is our opinion that the proposals would fail the assessment criteria outlined in BRE guidance. However, it is not the responsibility of the objectors to pay for an assessment. It is the responsibility of the planning authority to put these requirements onto the applicant. Due to the inconsistency in the application drawings, the impact of privacy amenity to our property is not clear. However, it's our opinion that obscuring windows does not present a positive effect on privacy when previously we were not overlooked from the dormer roof area. In fact, today on your visit, I could clearly see everybody through those obscured windows. On the same point, the ground floor rooms with habitable areas facing directly into our garden would also not comply with DP1 on the basis that the rooms were previously unused, therefore privacy into our garden has been compromised by the proposals. Furthermore, I can confirm, as an experienced environmental consultant, that the removal of the checkerboard fence would increase road traffic noise levels into our garden and would not be a positive change as proposed. I can further confirm that the bike parking area would not present an acoustic buffer as proposed by the planning officer. The application property is locally listed. Historic England state the following: its conservation as a heritage asset is an objective and a material consideration when determining the outcome of a planning application. No such consideration appears to have been made in this instance, particularly with regards to the destruction of the entrance structure. Regardless of the policy failures which I've outlined, the application should be refused or deferred at least, simply because the drawings are not up to date.
Okay, it's your time up. I hope you got everything you wanted to say. Thank you. Mr. John Reddy. Same rules apply. You'll have 3 minutes and a bell will go after 2.
Thank you very much. Good evening, thanks for your time. My name's John Reddy. I'm locally schooled and raised in Colchester. I've been a landlord since 1996, and I have a number of similar properties, similar scales, with excellent neighbour relations, mainly on the south coast. I've also had 2 neighbours offered kindly to speak to Ben or to the planning officer if they'd like first-hand experience of how well the properties are run and the amenity and what it's like to live next to. The current houses that I have, when you go up to them, they all look and feel like a big family house that's well-resourced, well put together, and frankly, better than the one that I live in. And they usually exceed, or they all exceed, local authority guidance on size of bedrooms, things like this. All of these, I would like to point out, are en-suite bedrooms. This will be my best property yet, as I've not yet used an architect. The tenants I have, I don't do short lets. I don't like youth hostels. Half my tenants are with me for 2 years or more, the other half for 6 months to a year. They're all typically 25 to 35 age, all working. I select them myself, I don't use agents. I get to know who they are, what they do. And on the odd occasion there's an issue, I go and speak to them and make sure that everything's okay with that. I would also like to confirm to Chris, I spoke to parking today. There are 2 permits for this property. Apparently, exceptionally, you can have 3. I asked the guy in parking to send you an email, Chris, and hopefully he's done that. I'm really excited about Florence House. It's a beautiful property. It's quite run down. And I'm really looking forward to using the current model that I have of running these houses to extend it, to give it a new lease of life. And that's pretty much it, actually. That's all I wanted to say. It's my own business, and it's very important to me that when my son reaches that age, as a young professional or a postgraduate student, that I'd be absolutely happy that he would live there and have a good communal place to go through that period of his life in. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cope, you have 5 minutes and a bell will go after 4.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm come to support Mr Cahill because I've spoken to him about this application, and that's why I called it in. Briefly going over my reasons for calling it in. There appear to be a conflict with the existing street scene in that a very attractive archway is going to be dismantled according to the plans. The proposed extension will attach the side wall of number 80. Change of frontage will conflict with street scene. The proposals represent overdevelopment in that up to 16 people will be lodged in 8 rooms. This will have an obvious impact on the amenity of the residents in number 80 insofar as potential noise will come from the small adjacent garden. The proposed dormer on the top floor will definitely overlook the garden space of number 80, invading their private space quite blatantly. Inappropriate design for a house of multiple occupation. Those are my reasons for calling it in, and it's for the committee to decide the extent to which they're valid or they've been addressed. Turning to the report, 15.2, which we've heard, how can potential demand for parking from a possible 16 people living in 8 rooms be less than that for a family house? I don't follow that at all. It seems to me that the existing parking in that area is already under stress, and it will add to that stress, and I think that's been glossed over. 15.3, clearly there is more work to be done on the design issue. How can this loose end be left? Turning to 17.1, approve following receipt of satisfactory revised plans. This is slightly surprising. How can plans be fully approved before they are finalised? It seems to enable future confusion and allows the future finalised plans to be completed without committee scrutiny, without the committee having an opportunity to scrutinise. Surely the planning authority is not yet fully satisfied. It should ask for the application to be withdrawn and resubmitted for further committee scrutiny. To summarise, 1, there is overdevelopment in this already overcrowded area, and I don't think the parking implications have been fully considered. The street scene is disrupted. 3, the overlooking issue of the neighbours. Question to the committee who visited the site today. Do the conditions at 5 of the conditions satisfactorily address this? That's a question. Finally, I think the recommendation is confusing and contradictory. It seems to be saying it's not okay, but it's okay. And I think that has to be thrashed out fully, and I would ask for it to be sent back for a further application, for a further submission, simply on the basis of what's being said in the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr Harden, would you like to respond?
Yes, as explained, it's not considered that the loss of the archway would warrant a refusal of the application. The scheme overall would generate a visual benefit in terms of losing all this fencing at the front, a replacement entrance here, keeping the link to the dwelling through the brick under the roof here, and we can also keep an element of the archway within the building, so it's not considered it is a reason to refuse the application because you're covering over and losing some of the archway. So it's not considered there will be a detriment to the street scene, there will be a visual benefit to the street scene. As explained, it's not considered there's an overdevelopment. There would not be a noise problem, and if there is any disturbance, environmental health can address that under their normal statutory nuisance legislation. So there has not been an objection from environmental health in that respect. Turning to the dormer, there will not be overlooking because it's going to be obscure glazed. So that prevents overlooking of neighbouring property. So that's quite clear that there will be obscure glazing in the dormer, and that can be the highest level of obscure glazing. Similarly, there won't be overlooking from the other windows because they will also be obscure glazed, and there'll be a condition to ensure that they are retained as obscure glazed. In terms of parking demand, the report outlines that because of the nature of these units, close proximity to town centre, it's not considered parking provision is necessary. The applicant has now explained there are 2 parking permits, so that is another favourable step forward. But even if there weren't, because of the nature of this scheme, the nature of the small units, it's not considered that parking provision would be necessary in this case. In terms of design, I've explained that there are no loose ends to the design. We've got the amended plans in. The only addition would be the condition relating to details of the way this access point in here is going to be treated. So members have got the designs before them with the exception of that element there. So there's no additional design detail required. It's not considered necessary to re-notify neighbouring properties on these amendments, which included putting a pitched roof here and corbelling here. Those are step forwards and are actually aimed to address some of the neighbours' concerns, and the other addition was the obscure glazed dormer clarification. So I don't think there's any need to re-notify in that respect. So finally, it's considered the plans are clear and that the recommendation is clear that there is approval with the conditions as outlined. So the recommendation, in my view, is a straight approval with conditions.
Mr. Cairns.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to propose an additional condition, if I may, should members be minded to approve the application. Clearly, the existing timber sash windows, particularly on the north and west elevations, make a material positive contribution to the character and appearance of the conservation area. And whilst the proposed use does fall within sui generis and therefore should not in itself necessarily generate any permitted changes to the appearance of the building, nevertheless, for the avoidance of doubt, your officers would suggest that an additional condition requiring the retention of the sash windows on those public elevations would be a very wise and sound move to prevent any unforeseen changes, and for the avoidance of doubt for the applicant. We leave that to you, members.
Thank you. There are no speakers, so I'm going to have a go. I can kind of see this from both perspectives, and this is one of these really horrible ones that we get every so often. Generally speaking, I can't think of a single planning reason to turn this down. I can think of a few reasons why Mr. Cahill would want to turn it down. If I was Mr. Cahill, I would want it turned down, and a lot of it is over privacy, and more importantly, perceived privacy. Because while he could see us going up the stairs, we certainly could not see into his garden. And we went to all the windows that overlooked. I would like a condition on the obscuring of the glass. I would like it to be the most obscured grade of glass that you can possibly get. And that's to protect Mr. Cahill's privacy as much as we possibly can within planning law. I do think the bike access could be fitted in to the small slope that is already there. There is a little bit of a natural slope that goes up to the rear entrance of the garage, and I just think that could be utilised and might not look so out of place. My main point is the arch. This is right opposite a conservation area. This is next to a conservation area. It's a really, really important building. And I think the arch has to be maintained. Now, because of the nature of what Mr. Reddy is trying to do, it might not be possible to actually maintain it visually, but I think it's got to be maintained structurally. So what I would like is a condition that the arch remains structurally within the building. It will take a little bit of manoeuvring to make it happen, but I just think it's such a good feature, even if it's covered up and can't be seen by the next 5 generations of Colchester, the 6th generation can always take it down and there'll still be that arch there. It's something that we would save for the future. I think it's a really beautiful house in a really beautiful area, and I think we have to be very, very careful what we do. Like I say, I don't think there is a planning reason to turn this down, but I would be very interested if any members could come up with one. Councillor Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with you. This is a very difficult situation to decide upon. I actually find the house rather austere. Number 80 is far more attractive. The house on the other corner of Beaconsfield Avenue has been refurbished and it's far more attractive than this one. So if it is passed, I would like to see those, whatever is being extended and added to and changed, to be truly quality, not just something that's just put there because it's utility. Like you, I'm very concerned about the arch, and I'm not too happy about that lean-to part of it. It just seems to be a little out of keeping. So however it's done, if it is done, that it is truly quality. I like the idea about the fences coming down and some railings being put up, because I thought that would open it up and soften it and make it look a lot nicer. I have to admit I hadn't considered noise, so I have no expertise on that side, but it needs prettying up a bit. And maybe in those refurbishments that could happen. I also was a little concerned about the number, the 8 bedrooms. When I looked at the plans online, I hadn't realised that those bedrooms would be for 2 people in each bedroom. And from my memory, there is one communal kitchen. And so the rooms are a nice size, but I wasn't sure to actually have 2 people sharing was quite a lot. But anyway, that may not be a consideration. But a plea, if it is passed, that it's quality rather than utilitarian. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chairman. One point raised by Mr. Cahill in his objection was the loss of light, if I remember him raising that issue. That is a material planning consideration. I'm not sure that I heard that spoken about by the case officer, so I'd invite him to do so, please.
Councillor Hayes, and then we'll go back to the officer.
Yes, I was just looking through the conditions to see whether there was a robust proposed condition about the use of materials, because I think it's very important to maintain the that rather attractive brick that's been used. And I concur with what's been said about the importance of the arch. because it's kind of, this building kind of dominates the meeting of several streets. It's right opposite the edge of the conservation area, and I concur with what's been said about that. Thank you. Could I just add something else? I'm sorry, I've just thought of something else. It was about the opportunity to retrofit with insulation and reuse of grey water and the kind of things that we want as a council trying to promote sustainability. I couldn't actually see anything about that in the proposals, but this seems an ideal opportunity when it's going to have to be pretty well gutted. There's a lot of, we saw a lot of sort of false walls and partitions and so on that will have to be taken out. And so I would like to know whether a condition of that nature is possible.
Can we go back to Mr. Harden?
Yes, Chairman. First of all, on the point of the arch, from the current scheme, some part of the element of the arch could be retained within the lean-to, so it would be the top element, the curved bit round here. If the supporting elements down here and here would be retained, then that would cut into the bedroom here, as you'll see. So it's just to clarify the point, I think what you were aiming for would be the top arch rather than the whole of the structure either side. So I think that's what you were aiming for. So the top element could be retained, the lower element couldn't be unless the scheme was revamped or potentially losing a whole unit. So just to clarify that point. In terms of quality, the condition in the report controls external facing and roofing materials, and we need to be very careful that we get high quality bricks and roof tiles that are going to match the existing building. So that'll be crucial to have samples submitted of those to make sure they are high quality and in keeping with what's there. If they weren't, that would not look good at all, adding something to it that doesn't match. So we'll need to be very careful in that respect. In terms of loss of light, the dormer window, it is a relatively modest size, to be honest, and it is quite a distance from the neighbouring property, so it's not considered there will be any significant loss of light or outlook to that neighbouring property. So the dormer extent is positioned there, the neighbouring property is over here, so it doesn't breach the rules we would normally have in terms of the angle of loss of light in that direction. And you'll see from the side elevation that that's the dormer located there. In terms of sustainability, there may be a potential to put a condition on. Certainly it would need to meet building regulations. That can be investigated. I know rules have been relaxed in terms of the standards dwellings have to meet, so we'd have to look into that a little bit further, I think, but it certainly need to meet building regulations. Yeah, that's all I can say on those points at the moment.
Mr. King, do you have a point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, with regard to the very valid issue raised by Councillor Hayes in terms of sustainable construction, sadly the government have scrapped the Code for Sustainable Homes, and it's their intention that issues of domestic construction in terms of sustainability is now dealt with entirely through building regulations, I'm afraid. So I don't think we can really impose a condition in that regard, because it would run counter to the government's intentions that this is really a building control matter rather than a planning land use matter. Thank you.
Councillor Chair.
Yeah, I was just going to support about the arch. the arch gave that house the character, and is what makes that house and gives it the prominence. And if it can't be the side of it to remain, it would be best that it's kept part of it, that it can be seen, to give that house the character it deserves.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'm almost terrified to speak now about the arch. I think I'm probably alone in thinking that that face of the building is the least attractive part. It's something it's not quite happy whether the positioning of the arch, anyway, but this is my opinion. I would like to see it retained inside as a memory of what it was. I actually think, just looking at the pictures, that it's going to be an improvement all round. What is going to happen to the outside? The poor building has been unloved for a long time, and I think this is a good opportunity to put it back into a living creature, whether it's a hostel, however many people are staying, but the fact that it will start to be lived in and hopefully loved, I think is a positive thing. Yeah, I would also propose that we do add the condition of glazing bars to the windows and that they should not be lost. I would like to add that because it could slip through the net otherwise. I don't know if anybody will support me on that. Thank you.
Councillor Hayes.
I would like to second the proposal about adding the condition about the windows.
Okay, as we currently stand, we don't actually have any proposal on the table. Ms Harden, would you like to?
Yes, that condition can be added with regard to the timber windows, retention of the sash windows.
Okay, councillors, I do not have any proposals other than that we add the conditions, so I would need somebody to propose either. Are you proposing that we accept the recommendation, Councillor Moore? Is that seconded, Councillor Scott, with the added conditions? Okay, everyone done? All those in favour of accepting the proposal according to the officer's recommendation plus the extra conditions that have been discussed, show now.
Chairman, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in favour.
All those against?
None.
And abstentions?
1 abstention, Chairman.
Mr Pearce. Okay, we're moving on to the Severals site.
Thank you, Chair. The report I've produced is a comprehensive report. I've tried to cover every aspect of the proposal, but in summary, it comprises 2 parts. There are proposals to either vary or remove some of the existing planning conditions on a planning permission that dates back to 2006, and there's also an element involving significant modification of the existing Section 106 agreement for the Severals redevelopment. And the reason that we're being asked to consider such changes, I've set out on the left. In some cases, the conditions are no longer relevant because infrastructure has already been provided. There is a serious question as to the viability of the project because of a range of abnormal costs associated with developing the site, which include removal of asbestos, filling in of an extensive labyrinth of underground tunnels, and special foundations to avoid damaging the parkland trees. Members will be familiar with the fact that this permission was granted in 2006. The site has remained unsold and gradually deteriorating since then. We've had 2 significant proposals or potential developers come forward. In that time, both have backed away because of the rising cost of development. We've also seen part of the site redeveloped for mental health purposes, the St Albans Centre, the CAMS unit, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Unit, which has effectively reduced the developable area within severals. So originally, we had expected to see 1,500 units within phase 1, which is the Crest Nicholson that's largely complete, and phase 2. Well, it's clear now that we will get nowhere near 1,500 units because of the redevelopment for the CAMS unit. So we're now looking at a total development of some 1,000 units, so it'll be 2/3 the size that we originally envisaged. And because of that, the amount of Section 106 that we can reasonably ask for will have to come down in order to reflect the reduction in numbers. So there's a whole panoply of reasons behind why we're asking you to consider these amendments tonight. I just thought it would be worth reminding members, so the piece in red on the right is phase 1 that's now largely complete. That's Crest Nicholson. The larger area in black is phase 2, which contains most of the original hospital buildings. And as you know, the new northern approach road now bisects the red area and the black area and goes up to junction 28. So what you're being asked to consider tonight are conditions that relate to the phase 2 land. As I've briefly explained, there's a number of reasons why we're asking you to look at the conditions. Some are technical, housekeeping, i.e. infrastructure has already been provided. Some we think the restrictions on the original conditions are now onerous in the light of changed circumstances. And some of the conditions we're asking you to change are simply because of a mistake on the permission in 2010 onwards, where we referred to a master plan, the original master plan from 2006, which was a 2004 document, but more latterly that was refreshed. And the more recent permissions should have referred to the updated master plan, but they refer to the old drawing number. So that's the housekeeping element. Just to show you the difference in master plans, that is the master plan from 2006. You'll see it's got the official council seals on it from the legal agreement. There is a lot of green area. As you know, the grounds to the hospital are a designated park and garden. It has special status. And there's a lot of woodland that was being retained within that original master plan. Well, the good news is that in the master plan from 2010 to 2013, that woodland remains. The largest piece of open space that appears to have disappeared is almost in the middle, where you see that purple element. Can I just point that out on? No, I haven't got the electricity in my fingers. There we are, there. That's being developed for the new primary school for Severals. So that was always on the cards, but it's just on the original master plan that was shown as green, but it was allocated as a school. So that's now under construction. And to help you gauge the two, so what we're suggesting is really the permission should refer to the master plan on the right, because that's the master plan that was most recently agreed by the committee. That was a simple drafting error when that permission was issued. I've given you, again with the seal on, so that you can see the drawing numbers that I've referred to in the report relate specifically to those particular master plans. Both of those are taken from the signed, sealed legal agreements from 2006 and 2013. I've now set out in a whole series of slides the exact word changing that we're suggesting, but I've also produced that on the sheet that you've had before you, and I think, as you can see, most of those are relatively modest changes. The report sets out in great detail the nature of those changes, but I just want to draw members' attention to the schedule within my report on page 69, which goes through in detail, condition by condition, which ones we think are appropriate to vary, which ones we think should not be varied, and they are largely the two which are identified by our own environmental health colleagues as not being appropriate to change. So what we're recommending to you is that we do not change those particular conditions. So that's condition 49 and condition 19. And there are some other conditions where we've suggested amended wording. I would suggest to members that this is the least controversial aspect of the proposal before you tonight, and perhaps the more sensitive one is the question of what does the Section 106 package, if you agree it, now contain. And we'll just quickly cut to the slide. The negotiation with the latest consortium looking to buy the site has been ongoing for some 6 months, and in that time we've drilled through their financial appraisals in great detail, and we've had external advisors, independent advisors, working with us to go through their figures with a fine-tooth comb. So our key objective as planning officers has been to ensure that we maximise or optimise the amount of affordable housing that we secure through this development. Originally, we were looking to secure 25%. That was in the original agreement. Viability of the project is such that we cannot reasonably secure 25%. The scheme just doesn't work financially if that's required. Your policies since 2006 have changed. We no longer require 25%. We now require 20%, so there has been a reduction through your policy. But even at 20%, the scheme is not capable of being implemented because it wouldn't be viable. So what we have done with our advisors is we've reached a point where 15% affordable housing, that's 112 units, would be viable with the other contributions that I'm going to explain to you tonight. So whichever way you dress it up, there is a significant reduction in affordable housing, but we think we have secured the highest level we can in the light of the fragile viability of the proposal. We have secured a £2 million contribution towards provision of the final piece of the busway. It would mean that we would have to secure external funding to finish it, but Essex County Council are also looking to see how much they could put into the pot with the 2 million to finally deliver the busway. And the other key driver in negotiations that I've been having with colleagues is to ensure, as far as we can, we protect the community benefits, so in terms of the community centre, the open space and the sports facilities. So first, top of our list, corporate priorities to secure as much affordable housing as we can. As I say, we think 15% is reasonable in the light of all the financial circumstances, which would deliver 112 units. We have secured an 80-20 split between affordable rented and intermediate. So the majority of those 112, I think it's something like 92 units, would be affordable rented units, and they're the units that we most need within the borough. Phase 1, which is nearly complete, didn't have to make contributions towards a lot of the other elements, but it did provide the 25% affordable housing, but very little else. So we've also secured 62 units there already provided within phase 1. We have secured 3 fully wheelchair accessible bungalows within this scheme, and it's something members have been urging us to try and secure in all new developments, and we've been singularly unsuccessful. Although we did get one at Wyvern Farm, we have managed to get 3 within this development. It's a small start, but it is a contribution that members have been looking for. In terms of how we've thought about how we can make up the shortfall between the 15% affordable housing and the either 20 or 25%. Now, you might normally expect us to try and put some sort of review mechanism within the legal agreement, so that if the developer makes more profit than was originally envisaged, the community would get some of that back that we could reinvest in affordable housing. But on a site like this, it is incredibly difficult because it's a relatively short build period, 7 years, because there are so many fewer units. It'll be a nightmare to try and work out what the profit level is, because the build costs as yet are unknown because of the uncertainties about the techniques they're going to have to use. So we've thought, how else can we be the masters of our own destiny? And what we've agreed, subject to your approval, with the consortium, is the area on this plan, adjacent to the Northern Approach Road, which is shown as a mixed-use area. That land will be gifted to the council at no charge, and that would enable us to provide affordable housing on the site, or to facilitate delivery of affordable housing, but also allow us to provide mixed use as well. So in that way, we think it is a reasonable compromise for the developer to provide fewer affordable units, but give us land on which we can then start to address the shortfall. Our record in the last year as a council in terms of securing affordable rented units has been poor, simply because projects have been so close to the margins that we've had to negotiate out a lot of affordable housing. In this particular scheme, we are still securing a significant contribution towards providing homes for people on our lists. The Northern Approach busway, on the plan on the right, the sort of snaky yellow line is the Northern Approach Road, but beside it is land that has been safeguarded for the delivery of the last piece of the busway. We will be gifted the land to provide that. We will get a contribution of £2 million towards its delivery. It's likely the overall cost will be 5.5 million, but we think we have a strong case to make to government in terms of how important this is to the overall transport strategy for the whole of Colchester, and particularly to make the park and ride even more attractive to users. In the event that we weren't able to deliver the busway, there is a fallback mechanism within the agreement that allows us to take £1 million of that and then reinvest it in affordable housing, and £1 million would go to Essex County Council to implement a range of transport initiatives in North Colchester. So we've tried to build in a mechanism that allows members to get something back for the community if the road busway isn't capable of being delivered. The other important element to explain is that because the number of units has come down, we've had to try and find a way of proportionately reducing the contributions that the developer is expected to make. And essentially, where we're receiving a financial contribution, those have been reduced by approximately down to 2/3 of the original in order to reflect the reduction in numbers. But what we have then done is built something into the agreement that says if additional units are subsequently built, we then get a per unit contribution back on top of the 2/3. So sorry if that sounds a bit complicated, but we've tried to work it to be reasonable to the developer to get the site underway, but also ensure that the community aren't being asked to give up everything, and that if there is additional units, we get something back for the people of North Colchester. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour through the basic elements of the proposal. I'm more than happy to take questions as and when. Thank you.
Okay, since I called it out, it better be me first. My main concern was about how we arrived at this, and you've explained that really, really well. We normally put a clawback in whereby if they make more money than we think they will, then we would get more money. However, that does leave the council at a risk. If they get less money, we get less. Are you confident that we have got the absolute best for the council, and does it go with the hierarchy of our strategic aims?
I am confident we have got the best we can get. It does accord with your corporate priorities. We're ensuring that we do get the delivery of affordable housing at a time when affordable housing is almost impossible to get delivered. I'm not making a political point, but the government has made it clear that it's looking very carefully at how affordable housing is delivered in the future, and it may be that affordable housing as we know it will not exist for much longer. We think it's important in Colchester to secure as much as we can while we can. I think it's also fair to say, as Councillor Manning said, that a clawback mechanism can work against us, because if profitability goes down, we might be expected to give up even more. So I think this allows us to draw a line in the sand and secure as much as we can at this point in time. I'm more than happy that this represents a reasonable and fair agreement. What I would also say is, and I say it in the report, that there is a strong risk that we get nothing, because if the planning permission lapses, the site is likely to sit empty for quite some time. The Homes and Communities Agency and the Mental Health Trust have been trying to sell the site since 2006. It is rapidly deteriorating, and my feeling is we take what's on offer now, we bank it, and we start to deliver some affordable housing and infrastructure for the people of North Colchester and Colchester generally while it is on the table. I think it would be a sad mistake if we allowed the site to sit deteriorating for another 10 years. There's always a risk in it. The developer's taking a risk, to be fair, because of the risk of abnormal costs escalating. So that's a long answer to, is it reasonable? I would say, in terms of the tests that the government now set us, it is reasonable.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. I think this was a very, very comprehensive report. I think it's been scrutinised to the third degree. I think a lot of work has been put into it on the business plan, on the development plan. Reading it, I feel very confident that the officers have done their job, have secured something that will benefit Colchester. They've looked at all the risk implementations. I would like to propose it, as I'm that confident in the officer that's done it. So, and I just think we need to get it moving, as the officer said, and this will be good for Colchester. And if we don't, we will miss the boat, and yet again it will sit empty. So I think if we've gained, we may have lost a little bit, but with the way that the economic climate's going and everything, I think we have to bite the hand.
Councillor Hazel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can Mr Pearce explain the 80-20 where he says the intermediate? I'm assuming 80% is for rent, and is 20 possibly to buy? Just an explanation of that, please.
Effectively, yes, it's 80% is affordable rented. The 20% is affordable housing, in that it allows people to staircase up, shared equity in a sense, but it's below what you would be able to secure on the open market.
Councillor Scott.
I'd like to thank you for a very comprehensive and clear report, and I'm satisfied that I understand it, and that therefore I would like to second the proposal that we take this report.
Councillor Lilly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to be slightly different, I think, from everybody else. The affordable housing, we brought it up before in the past with various schemes that have let us down for that. So I welcome that. You've worked really hard at doing that, but it worries me what the local community is going to get out of this. All they're going to get up there is more houses, more traffic, more cars. We've heard in various bits and pieces that the local community were promised a brand new community hall. And while I appreciate it's hard to negotiate everything, and with the rules, the laws coming out, we are getting less and less in 106 money, and perhaps it will stop altogether. It probably will be. But is there any other thing in there that the community would get out of it? Affordable housing is a bugbear of mine. We need more and more, and a lot more than 100. But could we get something better out of this in the future? Are we grasping at straws now? Is this a case of there's an iceberg 2 miles away, let's jump now, but it might miss us? Or is this the best possible deal that we could really get out of this?
We'll go through the councillors and then I'll let you come back. Councillor Hayes and then Councillor Harrington.
Yes, my first comment was very similar to Councillor Lilly's. Looking at page 66 in the agenda about community building, I feel that we should be concerned on behalf of the local community who are getting all the detriment, as it were, and what are they getting in return? And it looks as though the community building contribution is going to be reduced, and they are going to feel let down, and arguably rightly so. And we can anticipate in the future there'll be yet more pressure to build and infill and all the rest of it, which is sort of familiar to us as councillors, and then we will wish that we had a bigger and better community building, and the right time to get these things is before you put in all the housing. I would suggest, as with infrastructure generally, it's very difficult to add it afterwards. And in the same vein, I'd like to inquire whether we're satisfied there'll be enough school places under the revised proposals. My third point is about, again on page 66, it's about the open space and woodland. And the proposed adjustment of the section 106 clauses to reflect the fact that prospective purchasers intend to manage all open space and woodland areas via a management company rather than pass these areas to the council. Is that something that can be enforced in perpetuity? Because to me these woodland areas are very important, and I regret the breaking up of the continuity by putting the school and indeed the road in the way of the wildlife corridor. But I'd like to know how exactly the woodland provisions can be enforced. And finally, the piece of land that's being offered to the council for the affordable housing, how was that chosen, and does it have any particular problems with regard, for example, to asbestos, underground tunnels and all the other problems that have been mentioned in the presentation? Because I don't want the council to end up with an extremely expensive to redevelop bit of land. Thank you.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Chairman. I did indicate I would be happier if you would agree that Mr Vincent answer Councillor Hayes' points first, if that's all right with you, especially about schools and long-term management of woodland, perhaps before I come in, please.
Okay, we are very close to 8 o'clock, which I'm supposed to take a break at, so we need to speak quickly. Mr Pearce.
Thank you. I welcome Councillor Hayes and Councillor Lilly's note of caution, and you're right, we always have a dilemma as to, are we taking something in panic now that that we'll regret later, because we might be able to get more later. My honest feeling is we will not be able to get more later. The government has made it clear that planning authorities should not stand in the way of development by requiring excessive Section 106 demands. And as you know, Section 106 will not exist for much longer when the community infrastructure levy comes in. My feeling is that we would get, if we are then required to go through the SIL process on a new application, I think we would get potentially less for the community. I think it's also important that we take the opportunity to see the site redeveloped, because I think, as Councillor McLean has said, it is now looking quite sorry for itself. When you approach Colchester along the Via Herbis Romane, you look across and it looks quite derelict. So I think my honest answer is now is the time to take what we're being offered. But the note of caution raised by you both is important. It is fair to say that the community centre contribution will be less. I've set out in the report it'll be something like 700,000 with indexation rather than 1.4 million. But the good thing is that we have also within the agreement secured land for a community centre. That wouldn't alter. So just there is the community centre land. We would always have the ability at some future date to extend it if that was appropriate and if we could find the funding for that. But I think it is reasonable to say that if the development comprises 33% fewer units, it would be unreasonable for us to ask for the same level of community contribution, because the first question that anyone would say is, how can you justify that when there are significantly fewer units? The original contribution was based on 1,500 units. It was worked out as a pro rata calculation. We would be challenged and would be likely to lose if we hadn't have adjusted it. School places, the good news is that Essex County Council's Local Education Authority has forward funded the delivery of the primary school. That potentially is the 120 place and a 240. My understanding is they're providing the 240 at the start, which is bigger than they need, because that represents significant economic advantages of building it at the 240 while they're building the 120, and then they'll gradually open bits of it as the resident community increases within severals. As members know, we're also getting schools built through the Northern Growth Area proposal that Mersey Homes and Countryside Homes are doing, and that one Alistair's been working on. I think now is the time that we're going to start to see new school places, both primary and secondary, in North Colchester as these development sites come forward. Obviously, if they don't come forward, it's going to be harder to secure new schools, but you may say, well, if development doesn't happen, you don't need the schools. So there is a circular argument there somewhere, but I'm confident that the Education Authority have been tracking development in Northern Colchester very closely, and that they have, through our own Section 106 agreements, secured significant funding for new school places. So I'm happy on that score. I share potentially the reticence that members may have about, well, what does it mean if a management company is looking after the woodland? How do we know that they'll do it to the required standard, and will it always be accessible to the public? Well, in my report, I've only sort of given you the nub of the agreement, but deeper in the agreement, we've ensured that if at any point a management company no longer wants to manage the site and we're asked to take it on, it comes then with the relevant contribution that you would normally expect. We've also ensured that the woodland management and the open space management and the play area management conforms to a specification that we set out at the start. We would then be able to enforce that through the Section 106 agreement if they maintain it at a lesser standard. So I'm happy that we have a mechanism within the agreement that should allow us to do that. I think it's also worth saying that it saves the public purse significant funding after 25 years, because your contributions that you receive only cover the first 25 years of maintenance. After that, the public purse takes the full burden of that. And there is a significant amount of woodland and open space in this scheme. It will be very expensive going forward for the council to maintain it. I am happy that the area that we've identified, it was us as a council that proposed to the consortium that the land edged in blue is the site that comes forward. Our feeling is that, one, it will be on very good public transport connections. It will be almost adjacent to the primary school. It will be within a mixed-use area. In terms of an ideal location for affordable housing, it puts it right in the heart of the community with easy access to the infrastructure, the social infrastructure that is being delivered in the scheme. We are getting up to 12 local area play zones. We're getting a neighbourhood equipped play. We're getting 4 of those play areas. We're getting a wheel play area. That's all community benefit, that's safeguarded. We're getting a significant contribution towards local sports facilities that will be spent in the area. So whilst in my presentation, Councillor Lee, I didn't go through all the things that are still in the package, I just want to assure you that there is a lot more still sitting in the agreement for the community in North Colchester. The only other thing I would want to say is that I have worked very closely with Myland Community Council throughout this whole process and have taken them step by step through each of the series of negotiations we've been having. I can't say that they're happy that they're being asked to accept less, but they do understand the reasons why we are recommending to you that we accept this amended Section 106 agreement, and I'm confident that going forward we will be able to sustain that relationship with Myland Community Council. It's something that we're very proud of, working up that relationship with them. The fact that they're not here tonight, to me, suggests that they are fully cognizant of all the implications that flow from this. They have appeared before you previously when we've looked at things in North Colchester. They're not here tonight. So on that basis, I'm hoping that I have managed to, if not completely allay your concerns, I've managed to put some more flesh to those bones. Thank you.
I'm going to call Councillor Chur first because she hasn't had a go yet, and then Councillor Hazel for your second go.
Okay, thank you. I'm very pleased that you have managed to reach agreement and and done so much work on it, and also with the Myland Parish Council. The place has been left run down, vulnerable for so many years. I'm getting a bit emotional about it. And it'll be great to see it, with all the housing and with all the things that's in it. Yeah. The woodlands and the area around there has a lot of people who have been working around it, and they would appreciate that they could go and enjoy the environment. That's all I can say.
Very heartfelt speech there. Councillor Hazel.
Thank you, Chair. Brilliant news about the school, and if they model it on the St John's Green extension, it will be absolutely fantastic. Just one clarification, if I may. The fact that there is less Section 106 available, there will still be a community hall? Yeah. Is it just a smaller one?
Yeah. The agreement allows for a reduced contribution or the delivery of the community centre by the developer. So the answer is yes. But it would be nice if through, well, I'm adding a bit of extra here now, working with Faye in our community development team, she's always looking to see if we can add our own money from other agreements to provide a bigger facility, or even get European funding. So whilst it's a lesser amount, behind the scenes there are officers working away to see if they can draw in additional funding to provide something that really is quite exciting. But I can't promise you that, but I can say we're working on it behind the scenes.
Okay, there's no more councillors to speak. We have a proposal on the table. It has been seconded. All those in favour?
Chairman, that's unanimous.
Okay, and that completes the committee for this evening. Thank you very much.